Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Barbara Hamm Lee. A recent study shows America's graduation rate is up after years of decline. Still, with a nationwide graduation rate of 72%, the dropout rate stands at nearly 1/3 of all students. So what happens year after year to that 1/3? What is America losing by losing them? What can be done to keep them in the classroom and help them find their way to a diploma? Hampton Roads is one of many communities across America that has joined a significant national initiative to keep these students in school. It's called American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen. And this multi-year commitment is being undertaken by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. WHRO is playing its role in bringing together the people, the organizations, and the resources to help improve these graduation rates. And while success won't happen overnight, we're here to start the conversation. And who better to start this town hall conversation than those who are on the front lines, our teachers.
American Graduate Teacher Town Halls are funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and are part of American Graduate Let's Make It Happen, a public media initiative made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Tonight, we welcome our teachers, 100 of them, to our studio who registered for tonight's Teacher Town Hall. During the hour, we will talk about how our teachers view the dropout epidemic. We will learn some of the ways they are addressing this in their classrooms, what they believe is needed, and how home and community can help them do their jobs. Ahead of tonight's town hall, every teacher who registered also completed a survey. We will highlight some of those findings throughout the evening, and we'll also ask some new questions through text polling here in the studio. Assisting me tonight is Angie Callahan, Director of Children's Services on the education team here at WHRO. Angie, let's jump right in with the text polling question that is unique to Hampton Roads.
Thank you, Barbara. Through my experiences with NetFiles, I've been in hundreds of area teachers' classrooms. I've been there to document how they're engaging students using technology, all for academic achievement, and I am just honored to be here with all these fine teachers tonight. It's time to start our first text polling, so teachers, get out your cell phones, please. And our question is, do you think the major military presence in Hampton Roads affects the dropout rate? Please text A for yes, B for no, and C for not sure. Barbara?
Thank you, Angie. Before we hear from our teachers, let's find out about some of the dropout factors. As part of WHRO's look at the situation here in Hampton Roads, producer Lisa Godley spoke with students who are either at risk of dropping out or have already made the decision to do so. In our documentary, Challenging Circumstances, The Dropout Epidemic, we hear from students about some of the difficulties they face and learn what we can do to help them overcome those challenges and earn a diploma. Here's a brief overview.
How old were you when you found out that you were pregnant?
14.
The first thing that went through your mind?
I was scared.
My mom was diagnosed with epilepsy, and her partner ended up leaving her because of it. We ended up losing the house. I was homeless.
She said, "Mom, why is it that, I have people that just want to be mean to me?"
Every time I even walked into that school, I just knew that something was going to happen. I didn't like it, and I wanted to leave, and I didn't want to come back.
There is no one reason why a student makes the decision to drop out of school. Pregnancy, caring for a family member, homelessness, and bullying are just a few. And the majority are students who could have and believe they could have succeeded in school. Unfortunately for these students, life gets in the way. Christine Carter, a truancy officer at Norfolk's Granby High School, has seen it all.
It could be a range of anything. Lack of clothing, lack of food. It could be just not having the parents there in the home that could give them the support that they need to do their homework. They come to me with other personal issues, pregnancy, being displaced in the home, relationships with family members or the significant others in their life. They have issues way beyond the attendance issue. So having somebody there, just a positive figure, somebody just to listen, you know, just to listen. Most of the time, that's all they want is someone just to listen to what is going on with them in their personal lives.
So we saw some reasons why the students say that they drop out. What are some of the other reasons, teachers, that you're here tonight joining us? What are some of the other reasons that you know of as to why students drop out? Over here.
Hi there, I'm Jennifer Lands from Granby High School in Norfolk. A lot of students are disengaged from school. They're not connected to a teacher or administrator or any adult in the building, and sometimes they're bored or not challenged. They don't have an activity that's keeping them committed to the school. They wake up and feel like, oh, nobody will miss me today. So it's very important for students to feel connected and missed and important to that school.
So they actually think no one would care if they weren't there. What other reasons do we have? We have one lady here.
I'm Wendy Wyatt from Gloucester County Public Schools. I think a lot of children drop out because they fall behind and they lack the credits necessary to graduate, and they feel that there's such a difference between what they need to graduate that they give up and they think there's no hope. So.
Other reasons? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Wanda Williams from Lake Keller High School in Norfolk. I'm being told from the kids that they are not getting the connection from school to work. They're saying, I want to go out and live my life, and I don't understand how school is going to get me there. So often they're losing that connection from just the basic education out to the workplace.
I see a lot of you shaking your heads. You agree with that they're not making that connection. So where is the disconnect? Where is it coming from? Yes.
I'm Paul Hopkins from Advanced Path Academics in Williamsburg, and I think what you're hearing a lot is the relevance of the instruction. I think we're looking at a 21st century, global, economic demands of students, and the traditional high school is not necessarily always meeting those. And so it's very important that we look at innovation and we look at new approaches so that a student who says, do I need to be here for 6-7 hours a day in a block class to learn English, we need to make sure that the instruction is relevant and it's really attacking and providing them the skills that they need to be productive members of our society. So we need to be innovative. We need to rethink what the traditional high school has been for many years and look at new ways.
And look at new ways of doing things. Yeah. You know, it was interesting when we did the poll and the survey with all of you all before you came this evening, and so many of you said to us, thank you for asking our opinion. And I was floored by that, because I would think, since you all are on the front lines, that we would always have your opinion. What's your reaction to that? Yes.
Hi, I'm Betsy, and I teach at Churchland High School. I teach GED, and as a teacher, our opinions are always valued. Our superintendent has been working on the graduation rate for a while, and we actually have discussions on how to improve the graduation rate.
Okay, so you are engaged.
Yes,
and
we are.
You've had your questions answered. Has anyone never been approached to ask what they think about it, how they should change it, from a teacher's perspective? Yes.
Hi, I'm Zane McMurtry from Booker T. Washington High School. I teach 10th and 11th grade English. More often than not, there are regulations and stuff that are passed down and rules that are passed down to teachers that have no basis or foundation whatsoever in the classroom. They give us all these rules and regulations and things that we must do as teachers, and these are coming from people that hadn't been in the classroom in 10+ years. So how can someone who hadn't been in the classroom in 10+ years tell a teacher who's currently in the classroom what a teacher that's in the classroom now needs to do to motivate these children to learn?
Okay. How many of you are new to the classroom? Fairly new, like within 1 to 5 years of teaching? Okay, I have a question I'm going to come back to you with in just a moment, but I understand we have the polling results from the question about the military. Do you think the major military presence in Hampton Roads affects the dropout rate? 29% of you said yes, 60% said no, and 11% said not sure. So that's interesting, because we always hear about how transient military students are, but you don't think that majority of you don't think that has much to do with it. What do you think? Yes.
Hi, I'm Kim Callahan, Maury High School. I think the military has a positive influence, not a negative influence on our area. Parents of students who are in the military, they're easier to get a hold of, they seem to respond faster, and there seems to be more guidelines and a little bit more structure at home. So I think the military is a positive impact on our education.
So the fact that they have to move so often and so forth is normally not a factor in terms of a military child saying, I can't keep up, or?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, okay. We have someone else down here, but let me go over to this way while you come down, okay? Yes.
Hi, I'm Christy McAnally from Lansdowne Middle School in Virginia Beach. I'm a product of military schools. I was a military kid growing up, and I can tell you, even though I'd gone to 13 different schools before I reached my freshman year of college, my education was the world. And I think the military children bring that to the classroom, and they add to what we're teaching in our classrooms because they have traveled more so than some of the other students in the classroom. I sponsor a club at our school at Lansdowne Middle for military children. And I think that it is a positive influence in our education system with the military.
Okay. We have a question over here. I think if we can get to you.
Elisa Landrum, Oscar Smith. I didn't see the question that way at all, which is surprising because I'm a Navy wife myself, but I thought of it in terms of the number of students who have said to me at Oscar Smith they don't need to get their high school diploma because they're going to go into the military.
Oh, that's interesting. But actually, you do need your diploma now to go into the military, don't you? So I see. Okay. We have one more teacher here.
Barbara Patterson, Nansen Parkway Elementary. I'm
nice
academic
name.
coach. Nansen. And I think there's two types of transients in Hampton Roads, and one is the military, but the other I think does have impact on our students is between all of the different cities. We have kids that they regularly move from one city to the next, and it has to do with public housing, and I can get in this city, you can get this housing, and then if I move at this time, I can get these benefits from this section. And we have quite a few kids who are moving between cities and not as much collaboration between teachers and administrations of those cities, so those kids have smoother transitions.
Wow, who else has that experience in terms of their class? So that is really more so moving from because we are unique in this area with our 18 school divisions and so forth, but the kids move back and forth. I had asked a question earlier about those of you who have been in the classroom from 1 to 5 years or so, because it seems that the issues that students face that cause them to drop out have a lot more to do with the social side, the cultural side, the economic side, as opposed to the educational side. And I'm wondering from the new teachers, and I'm pointing over in this direction because I know there are a few of them, are you trained to deal with those types of issues in addition to your training to actually teach?
C.J. Frank, Lake Taylor High School, Norfolk. It's interesting you talk about training because I can't tell you how many times I've asked to do something, and when I go to another teacher, they're very helpful, but they'll say to me, well, Mr. Frank, I don't know how to do it either, but this is what I do. So I think it really matters that we focus more on the training, and when we do that, then we can help the students more.
Okay, so more training, you're saying, is what's needed. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Melvin Moore, Mitchell High School. I teach freshmen. I think one thing we need to identify when it comes to dropout rate is resources. Under-resourced children are higher at risk of dropping out. And as teachers in our classrooms, we have to be able to identify what that under-resourced kid may or may not need in your classroom. In terms of training, teachers need to be trained in being able to identify and meet that student's needs. Pencils, pens, all the way up to computer access, internet access.
So you're talking about the resources they need in order to function within the classroom.
Absolutely, because everyone's becoming high tech, and some of the children are at risk, don't have the necessary resources, whether it be parental support or technological devices at home.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone, who has a child now that you can look at and say, I'm wondering, is that child in trouble? Can anybody share some of the stories? This lady here.
Hi, Yes, Della Jordan, Bethel High School in Hampton. Just today, actually, I reached out to a parent to let them know that I have a method in my classroom where my students fall below a C in my class. We mail letters home as a form of communication because, like the young man was saying over there, we can assume that y'all have the internet access to check grades. And I actually reached out to this parent. This son is he's supposed to be 11th grader. He is still on paper a 9th grader and still failing all of his classes. And I do at my school what we call the SIT teams, which is in high school, but the student intervention teams. And my job is to take referrals or intervene when students are failing, and seeing that he's already an African-American male, 11th grade supposed to be, 9th grade still on paper. I reached out to his mother today, and we're going to schedule their SIT meeting right after our spring break next week. So we just don't know as teachers. We don't know all of what the students are bringing into the classrooms when they come. We just have to be prepared to help them.
Who else has a story? Is anyone from this side? This lady here in the t-shirt? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andrea Chandler. I teach at Plaza Middle School in Virginia Beach. I have a student right now who's a young lady, full of energy, full of potential. However, she's undomiciled, has been that way since 6th grade. School is sort of the bottom priority for anyone in that household. Besides just not having a regular home, there's so many issues in that family that literally school is the last thing on anyone's mind in that home. And then she has out-of-school suspension issues as well on top of that. So there are behavior issues, and right now she's in 7th grade. And I see very easily by 9th or 10th grade, one more thing being added to her list of things going on, causing her to just drop out of the system.
So what do?
You try any method of things every day. You try to let her know how important this education is. You try to have her reflect on what went wrong at home and see that this education can be your way out. And you have to push that home every day above all the other issues that she has going on, to let her know that this education is something, as my dad would say, that no one can take away from you. I said, everything else can be taken away from your home, the clothing that you have, but this education, once you have it, no one can take it away from you. And so it's really saying that over and over, and I feel sort of like a broken record, but I say it, at least weekly to her when she's there, because she's not all the time.
Because it's hard to even get her to come in. Okay, I know we have some other stories and we're going to get to them, but I want to move on to some of the factors that would have an impact on improving student academic achievement. So we're going to head on over to Angie for another poll question and more findings in one of our survey questions. Angie?
Thank you, Barbara. One of the survey questions that we thought we'd like to talk a little bit about tonight is that this group had a very strong impact on improving academic achievement. What were the things that had a very strong impact? And the top 3 things were, not surprising, smaller class sizes, we all believe that, mentoring programs, and then current up-to-date technology, which is another thing we all want. But I think what the teachers are telling us right now falls right in line with our next polling question, because we want to look at personal mentoring. So teachers, if you'll get your cell phones back out, remember to text A, B, or C. The question is, do you act as a personal mentor to your students? Text A, as often as possible. Text B, occasionally. Or text C, I do not see that as my role. Barbara?
Thank you, Angie. I was just getting ready to go to that whole thing, class size, which you all said in the survey was an issue. I can imagine that trying to teach 30, 35 students at a time could be a bit challenging. But how do you observe all of your students and try to keep them all together and also look out for that child that might be at risk of dropping out because they just can't seem to get it together? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Yes, sir. Let's see if we can get you a microphone. There we go. Got people everywhere.
Bill Constant, Smithfield Middle School. In math, we put them in pods. That way they're grouped in 4s. They do their own peer tutoring with each other. Like one day a week, they'll go over the homeworks, they'll compare answer. It's easier to walk around the room and work with 4 at a time. My one class is 20, my first class of the day, my last class of the day is 31. And there is a great difference. The smaller class size definitely works a whole lot better. Their grades are better. It's because they get more one-on-one attention. With 31 at the end of the day, the pods work great than the rows.
So even though the kids are doing some peer mentoring, peer tutoring also, still when you have that larger group, They still need your individual attention. Is
Oh,
that...
definitely. They all want that individual attention, and you have to be that mentor. They have to see that you care. If the student sees that you care, they're going to work harder. They know. They're smart. They know if you care about them or not. Exactly.
Absolutely. What are some of the other techniques that you all are using in your classrooms?
Tina White, Menchville High School,
Tina.
Newport News. Hello. I think the use of technology, particularly with a large class size, helps because you can get kids engaged. I teach students physics, and just to get them engaged one-on-one, we can, and then I can move around and facilitate. The major impediment to that is we spend over 2 to 3 months a year using that same technology to test students, and then it is not available to help students to learn.
Because they have to use it for the test. Okay, and I know I'm going to get a reaction from this, but what about that whole teaching to the test thing? Are we teaching to the test? Do you find that you have to?
Yes, you have to.
Okay, there's a gentleman over here on the other side. And we just want to get his response.
Hi, Tom Shank, PE teacher at John Tyler Elementary School in Portsmouth. I think when it comes to looking at standardized testing, we have to realize that the test drives instruction. I mean, we all learn this in our education classes. You decide what the test is going to be, what you want the kids to be able to do at the end of the day, and then you have a test that measures that, and that's going to drive or cause the teachers to teach in that way. And right now we have a test that's mostly memorizing facts or just kind of spitting back what they've been taught instead of higher level critical thinking, which is what we're going to need our students to be able to do in the 21st century, to solve problems, to be innovators, et cetera.
But knowing that we have the SOLs and there's certain benchmarks that you have to meet and so forth, how much of your teaching, how much innovation can you use in order to keep teachers engaged, students engaged, while at the same time making sure that you're meeting those goals that you have to meet? Yes.
Lanita Collins, Forest Glen Middle School, and I teach English 7. In middle school or in my classrooms, I've typically engaged my students in project-based learning, where I've designed projects in order to teach the curriculum at my school or in my classroom. What I found just this year alone with my students is that they've been resistant to those projects. And part of it, and one thing that I've realized is this class of students that I had, they were the first generation of No Child Left Behind. And so with that being said, all through their school career, so to speak, they have been taught only to memorize facts. And so they get to my class, and I'm trying to challenge them to think at a different level, and they are fighting me all the way through. And so it's made for a hard school year because I'm used to teaching project-based. That is how I know or the skills that I know that they need to do in order to be able to be successful learners and productive citizens. But they are fighting me, and it's just a hard time.
I tell you, the amen corner is going on over here. Because I can just hear them behind me going, yes, yes, yes. Can I get a mic over here, please, so we can talk to this teacher?
Lou Ann Smith, Church on High School. I teach 9th through 12th graders. What I have found and what our school is finding right now is they're changing those SOL tests and they're asking the children to think. And our kids can't do it, okay? And so the scores are plummeting. Now, I'm 34 years in this profession, and I think that if we take a look at it as a whole, if we had let the teachers teach what was important, then these kids will pass these tests. But right now, we are defeating our students even further with No Child Left Behind because they switched the tests, but these kids don't know how to think.
So, okay, so now knowing that that's the new challenge, what are you all doing to, again, keep these kids engaged? Because I can understand that having that type of frustration, I might just say, well, never mind, I'm just not going to do this. So what are you doing to make, while this transition is happening, to make things happen? There we go.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Inga Francis from Nansemond River High School, and I teach 11th graders. And I agree with my colleague from Forest Glen. You've got to get them engaged. You don't have to teach to the test. If you lecture every single day, they're going to disengage because our kids are consumers now. They're not critical thinkers because we're losing that, but they're consumers. They're buying pocketbooks, they're buying cell phones, they're changing cell phones, they're buying video games, and they're buying teachers too. I mean, they're listening, they're watching, and if you're not project-based, and I know it's tough, they're not learning. So what I think you have to do, it's like when your mom used to grind up the broccoli and put it in the macaroni and cheese. You teach them everything. You have them hands-on, you have them smell it, touch it, feel it, and they don't even know that they just learned something for the SOL. But if you give them a fill-in-the-blank sheet, they're savvy. They're like, okay, you know, I'm going to memorize that, that's it. And then we end up with a kid who gets out of school and cannot finish college because they can't think. They can memorize, but they can't think.
And
But
that
I don't
is
think
the
you have to
key.
teach to the test.
Okay. All right, we have the results back from our the last poll that we just did. If that could come up, there we go. Do you act as a personal mentor to your students? 87% of you said as often as possible. 13% said occasionally, and 0% said I do not see this as my role. That is fantastic. Honestly, you guys give yourselves a hand. That is wonderful. You know, it's a big shift because, you know, I remember, I think it was Charles Barkley and others, you know, these sports figures who say, I'm not a role model. You clearly consider yourselves a role model. Did you know that that came with the job of being a teacher, or is it just something that just kind of came together? Who wants to talk? Let's get this lady here on the end.
Hello, I'm Davita Bratt, Norview High School, and I teach GED students. And of course I knew it was what came with the job, especially with my particular population. So you go into the classroom ready to not just teach those skills. And for my classroom, it's a lot different because they're in there for a shorter amount of time, and we're actually working toward a goal, so it's not year-round. And I know that not only do they need to pass this test, but that I need to give them what else they need because they're coming into the classroom with a lot of different issues, a lot of different concerns. Some of them don't have the parenting like mentioned before, or they don't have other mentors. They just, at this point, they don't have people who even believe in them. Mm-hmm. So to just say that I believe in you and you can, sharing what you want to about your life or about experiences. You know, today they were talking about the stress and strain of family pulling on them as it relates to them coming to school. And I let the young lady know, I said, you're on an airplane. One thing that the stewardess tells you, if you begin to lose air pressure, is to do what? You put the mask over your face. Mm-hmm. I said, you can't save anybody else until you save yourself first, and that's what this is about.
Mm-hmm. Very good, thank you. Yes.
Debbie Dixon, Oscar Smith High School in Chesapeake. Okay. I look at teaching as, and I need to say this, and please don't take it the wrong way, as a ministry. I understand where I'm coming from. I'm not saying I'm a preacher in the classroom, but what I'm saying is, as a teacher, I have to have a very strong sense of discernment for my students. You have to be able to identify when there has been a change in the demeanor of a child, when there has been a change in just the overall physical appearance of a child, as well as attitude and all of these issues. And I tell my students, look, don't look at me and take me for where I am. I haven't been this way. I came up in the projects. I know what I went through, but what I did have, what is different from a lot of these kids, a support system. So as teachers, we have to support our children.
System. I want to ask a question, because no matter what study you look at or program or statistics and so forth, African-American male children come up at the highest rate in terms of dropouts across the board. It doesn't matter. Where you can have a small African-American population, you can have a large one, doesn't matter. Across the board, our black boys are struggling. What is it that you all see as teachers that can help re-engage them? So and we have Coach Cadillac Harris here with us, and I'm going to point to you if you can bring the mic down, because I really would love to hear your perspective on this, and the rest of you also. But what is it that you think we need to be doing to get them engaged?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. We are definitely role models, and all of us are role models because for the most part, the biggest thing that a kid might see is one of us walk in that classroom and to be able to give a kid the right information. One of the things we have to do is be able to put that model up, that picture. If you don't give kids pictures of where they can go and help them to draw a mind map, you got to ask the key question. One of the key questions you got to ask is, what do you want to do with your life? You know, what do you want to do? And surprisingly, I had kids say, well, I don't think I'm going to be alive by the time I'm 25. That's a scary feeling. I had a kid have a birthday, and he said, well, I think it's great. I'm going to be 25 years old. I never thought I was going to get there. So what we need to do is, one of the things is create a map, a picture, and run that commercial. That's what these teachers do. What teachers do, we run that commercial over and over about positive ways and positive impacts. And at the same time, we're taking kids who are coming from broken homes. You know, the whole landscape has changed. More than 60% of them are in blended families. So it's our role to model what they need to do. And if we don't do that, then we can't be surprised. The other thing that that bothers me, and I think that's a major part, and no one really talks about it, we have transitioned from a whole different system. I think we have system failure, and we're afraid to say that. And you look at it.
You're talking about the school system failure?
System failure across the board. And it's that wave that came across from California where we changed the whole system. If you look at the dropout rate and what took place in the age bracket of kids, when we went to middle school concepts, and you bring a 9th grader who is not prepared to walk into a classroom and to go in and be with the 10th and 11th and 12th graders, they are not physically ready nor mentally ready for that. So we bought into that concept, and now that dropout rate has ballooned.
Because 9th grade is where a lot of students decide
all
that they're going to drop out.
The statistics tell you they decide in the 9th grade. Well, guess what? If you kept them back when they're in 9th, 8th, 7th grade with that group, when they get to high school, they're looking forward to be to high school, but they're going to be a year older, they're going to be a year more mature, their body's going to be developed at a different level, and now they won't be prey when they come into a high school system and when they start watching certain things on TV, and they think they need to act those things out. So that's a system failure. How do we go back to that? You know, the State Department, someone's going to step to that issue, but you know, right now, that's what we see. And if you ask teachers who've been in the business for years, they'll be able to tell you, and they'll speak to that. I guarantee you they'll say the same.
Thank you, Caroline. Well, actually, we do have Dr. Vivian Stith Williams with us, and she is from the Department of Education. If I could get a mic over here, one way. Do you want to answer?
I think we're talking about some very complex issues, first of all. But if you look at what the research is saying, if you look at the data as well, some of the issues start way before the child gets to 9th grade. And you got to look at the attendance of the students. You got to look at their elementary age experience. Because if they have not been successful in 3rd grade reading, that's the beginning of the conflict, the beginning of the demise in terms of success. So then you go to 4th grade not prepared, so it builds up and builds up. So by the time you transition to 9th grade, you're already behind. If you look at the data, particularly for African American boys, reading and math are the 2 core issues that keep the students back. And then you add the behavior in there, and those 2 variables, those 3 variables are really key. So one of the things we're trying to do is look at the early intervention. And the earlier the students are intervened, the greater the success. You're also looking at it in terms of, we're starting kids earlier and earlier. And so developmentally, you got kindergartners, we want kids in kindergarten to know how to read, but developmentally, a lot of kids are not there yet. So therefore, it's not just that we're not preparing them. Developmentally, kids develop at different stages. So every child that's 5 years old is not ready to read and do math. Some of them, yeah, and I think it's great to stretch them, to bump them up. But then you also have to have variations. Then you got to have the kids like the little engine that could. They start off really slow, and then they build up steam. And as they build up steam, they can progress. But we got one size fit all, just doesn't work. So that's why we're really trying to. That's why we're trying to spend a lot more time and a lot more attention right now on early intervention and looking at preschool readiness, and also just trying to have some students do some grouping and stuff so that you can bump. But you got to understand, too, the other things that preschool is not required. Preschool is actually optional. So some kids have it. Some kids are going to get it and are going to be ready to go. Some kids may not have those resources in order to be able to go. Then there are parents who are working at home and maybe at home, and they may keep their kids at home and teach them at home. So they may hit the kindergarten with some skill sets that's a little bit different. but yet they may be on point for their development, but at the school level, we're still expecting for them more. So one of the things we're continually trying to do is we're looking at the dropout rate. We're trying to do grants. Right now, one of the things that I'm looking at is looking at suspensions and expulsion, because there's a significant impact of suspension and expulsion. If you've suspended enough time, you get behind. So when you do go back, you're like, I'm going back, but I'm behind. So why am I going to go back? I might as well drop out. So that adds to dropout as well.
Adds to it also.
So it's a ripple effect.
Okay. So we have a lot of issues that we can talk about, but we do have one more polling question first, and then I'm going to come to this side because I haven't talked to you all in a while. So let's check back in with Angie for another poll question. Angie?
All right, Barbara. One of our other survey findings that the teachers here in the studio with us said that we thought was interesting were what was absolutely essential characteristics impacting academic achievement. And the top one was effective and engaged teachers. And from what I can see in our studio tonight, we have a lot of effective and engaged teachers. And then they also said that family involvement and support was highly important. So that leads to our next poll question. And it's going to be about parenting, but we've got a little different twist on this, I think. Okay, teachers, get your cell phones out. And the question is, how often do you communicate with the parents of your students? Please text A for weekly, B for monthly, or C for a few times a year. Again, the question is, how often do you communicate with the parents of your students? Barbara?
Thank you, Angie. Okay, I want to talk with some folks. I know I got to get this side and this side because these folks have been really running and talking a lot. Back to things that you do inside your classroom to engage all of your students. And we were talking about particularly African-American males before we left. The whole idea of social promotion and having older kids or different ages of kids, how does that affect how you wind up teaching? I know we've gotten to you once. Can we get to somebody we haven't spoken to on this side? How about this lady here? Yes. Thank you.
Trish
And we'll come back
Parnell,
to you.
Churchton Elementary, Portsmouth. I'm a K-1 special ed teacher, and in our city, they believe in social promotion. And at the elementary level, we're totally against that because we agree with the state that if you don't have that foundation to get it in those early years, you're going to always be behind and you're always going to be looking for, catching up. So I applaud you for agreeing with us elementary people who truly believe if you don't have that foundation, you will be dropping out.
I want to ask you a question. I read an article today where the educator just said that if in your school special ed is a place, then you have a problem within your school because as opposed to a set of resources to help a student succeed. Do you agree with that? In other words, he's saying if you're shipping the kids off to special ed, you're shipping them off to a place where they're kind of warehoused, if you will, as opposed to using it as resources.
There's a place and a time for every child. I'm an inclusion teacher, so I spend half the day in kindergarten and half the day in first grade. Most of my children have fit that model. But
and
occasionally,
inclusion teacher means that
I'm
you
the
mix.
special ed teacher and I team with a regular ed teacher.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
my children don't know that I'm a special ed teacher. They think they're lucky and they have 2 teachers. And my first grade teachers think they have 2 teachers. So they don't know who's special. They don't know who's regular. So it's a wonderful thing. But every once in a while you get that child that just doesn't fit within that mold because of the severity of behavior or anger that they put other children at risk. So they don't fit the model. And they have to be housed elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
Yeah, but most of our kids, it's a beautiful thing.
Okay, right next to her.
My name's Judy Post. I teach at Windsor Elementary School. And the whole social promotion versus keeping them back is an issue. Statistics say once they fail, they're not as likely to graduate. Once they failed twice, they're way, way not as likely to graduate. And we're studying that out in Olive White. We're trying to up our graduation rate, and it's pretty good, but you always have room for improvement because you don't want anyone to drop out. But what really came out of some studies that we looked at was by 3rd grade, and I think she mentioned that by 3rd grade, like with a really high accuracy, the teachers could predict who was going to drop out by looking at their reading and math skills. And so it's, do you hold them back and look at the statistic of retention equals they don't always graduate and you end up with 16-year-old ninth graders? Or do you socially promote, but then they're, you know, the kid that sits in the back of the class and causes trouble? So it's a really hard place to be in and a hard equation to figure out.
Okay, let me get to this gentleman over here, and then we'll come to someone over on this side.
My name's Jimmy Gerald. I'm a graduation coach at Warwick High School. What I'm finding out is that a lot of the kids who do drop out are special ed students. A lot of the special ed students are not able to pass the SOL test. They are not equipped academically to pass the SOL test. You have different types of diplomas that they can receive, but some of those diplomas are frowned upon within the state of Virginia. So that's a big issue that we're facing.
So as a graduation coach, what do you do?
We work with dropout recovery. We bring students back in. We work with incoming freshmen. We work with seniors, keeping them on track to graduate. We work closely with the GED programs, adult education programs. We do a lot of home visits, meeting with parents and community members as well.
So, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do want to ask you one other question. So when you go to a child's home and that child has dropped out, what do the parents say to you in terms of, one, did they know? Seriously though, did they know that they dropped out? And then secondly, what do they feel about the fact that their child dropped out?
You'd be surprised. Just today, I had a parent call and say, I called her yesterday. She called me back today. Her child hasn't been to school maybe in the last 12 to 15 days. I asked her, you know, what's going on with her child? Her response is, I don't know what to do with him. He won't go to school. In return, my hands are tied. I either have to go to the home and try to, you know, convince the child myself to do so, but without that parental support, it's almost null and void. Okay. So it's very difficult.
Okay. Who else had some things to deal with? I know we got a bunch over here. Let me go with this lady here first, and I'll come back to you guys.
Hi, I'm Sharon McClone from Norfolk Public Schools. One of the very positive things I've seen as I piggyback on starting very early in a child's life are the parent centers or the parent liaisons. We have elementary schools in all levels here in Norfolk, and I'm sure at other communities, who are working with parents, helping them know what is it my child needs to be successful. You know, we all think that maybe parents already know that, or they get up and they get them ready and they send them to school. But there's even more than that, but perhaps I don't know as a parent what those factors are. So our parent centers in schools are doing tremendous jobs. I witnessed at a school the other day where they had donuts for dads, 180 dads, male people came out.
Male people?
Male people. And I won't say that they were all maybe, you know, biological dads, but they were uncles and neighbors and male people coming to this school having donuts with these young African Americans, because the school was predominantly African Americans children. That speaks volume. These are young children that will make a difference. They will be engaged. They will be a part of that system, so they can go on and do what they need to do as they get older.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of that, then we know we also have some poll results, so let's go to the poll results. How often do you communicate with the parents of your students? 56% of you said weekly, 17% said monthly, and 27% said a few times a year. So here's my question to you all. We hear about this all the time, and I'm gonna get somebody from this section when we go. There's this fight, this tug of war between parents and teachers. Yes? No? Oh, yes. Okay, this lady here.
Lena Simmons from Portsmouth Public Schools. I communicate with my parents daily. I'm in elementary school. The parents come in to pick them up, and they ask me, well, what kind of data they have. I communicate with them in that manner. I send home a weekly letter. Like this week, we're going to have an umbrella parade for March. I send home a weekly letter. A lot of them don't have email. Those who have it, I use it, but those who don't, I send a letter. they stay in school and they're
because
advanced.
you get them engaged from the beginning. Yes. Who teaches middle school? Because I'm curious, and if I could get the mic over here. I'm curious, you teach middle school too, and David, let's go with you. How do you send notes home?
David Squires, Lafayette Winona Middle School in Norfolk, teach 6th grade English. I definitely send notes home. I do communicate with my parents every day. I have a pack of notes that I bought from TAPS, and so sometimes the kids take them home, sometimes they won't. So other times I mail them home. I also make frequent phone calls, and most of my parents have my cell phone number, and I find that the parents are the teacher's best friend. And usually, particularly for discipline and for motivation, you gotta call that parent to help get that kid back in gear. A lot of times it might be a grandparent or it might be an aunt or uncle. A lot of the kids are not traditional families, but communicating with the parents is definitely a must to be a successful teacher and successful student.
Okay, who teaches high school over here? Okay, let's get that lady back here. How often do you communicate, and in what ways?
Suzanne King, Western Branch High School. I teach 9th graders, 31 years.
Wow.
We communicate every week via Edline. Cell phones ready, telephones ready, parent, we're at the ready. I did want to say this, that I was honored with 12 at-risk students in one class. None of these students had passed science ever. They were given to me in September. The principal said, Suzanne, do what you can do. Our expectations are your expectations. 11 out of 12 passed the SOL test. And they're all on track. Okay, so class size matters. Class size matters.
Class size matters.
Yeah.
And you also brought up another point, and that's about expectations. Do we expect all of our children to succeed? Yes. This lady here. Mm-hmm.
Julie Byers, Jaycox Elementary School, Norfolk Public Schools. Every child has a voice, and our job is to hear what they have to say. And I think that if we keep our expectations at that level, then we know, and they know that we care in that deep of a way, that the rate of dropping out will go down.
So it comes back to that caring.
It's caring, and it's understanding that kids need to be assessed in more ways than just multiple choice tests. They need to be in great literature and be writing and across all of the content areas, because that's how we can connect with them.
That's how you connect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Also in the survey, we asked about effective ways businesses and communities can support students in their career search. But before we get into that discussion, let's check with Angie Callahan. Angie?
Thank you, Barbara. You guys had a lot of great ideas for how the business and the community at large can get involved. Sponsoring student activities, clubs, field trips, sports, educational promotions, incentive programs, cooperative fundraising efforts, school supply donations, helping with career days. So our last polling question tonight is going to be about community and business involvement in your school. If you'll get your cell phones out one last time, the question is, in your own experience as a teacher, would you say the level of community or business support in your school is? Text A for high, B for medium, C for low. Barbara?
Okay, Angie, thank you. We only have about 5 minutes left, over. Can you believe it? I mean, this conversation is just getting going. But I am curious as to what, we want to talk about solutions, and we want to talk about what you need from the community. And from a teacher's perspective, but also take off your teacher hat for a minute. And just as a community, what do we need to be doing? This lady here.
My name is Carla Turner, and I'm a teacher at Net Academy, which is located inside Norfolk Detention School. And I think it's very important for the business sector to make a connection with students. I think, as someone else said, you have to write the vision, help the students write the vision and make it plain. Our kids in detention, I had a conversation with them about coming here today. And I had them to brainstorm some things. And we talked about an article. And that article was about the business sector and about there being a port in the area and that there are all these maritime jobs opening up. And I was surprised to find out that over half of my students had no idea what a port was. They didn't know where a port was located. Wow. And so how are my students to find the jobs if they don't understand where the jobs are? And so I think it's so important for businesses to connect, especially with my children. My children are in detention and they feel disenfranchised. They know they want money and they say that there's money above everything, but they don't know the value of it. They don't know how to get the job to attain it. And I think that that's where creating a vision that connects their education and the business sector comes in handy and helps them.
Probably an article you were talking about, one of our sponsors of American Graduate, the Virginia Ship Repair Association. And they're talking about the fact that there are going to be 20,000 jobs available and they need people to be able to fill those jobs. Absolutely. Let's get this lady here. Thank you.
I'm Teresa Cole. I am an early childhood teacher at the Technical and Career Education Center, which is our technical and career education high school in Virginia Beach. It is an option for many, many students. They come prepared when they graduate from high school. They not only have a diploma, but they also often have industry credentials that they can go out in the workforce, work, and go to college.
Thank you so much. All right, we're down to about the last 2 minutes, so let's go to our poll results for the last poll. As a teacher, would you say the level of community or business support in your school is high? 18% of you said high, 33% said medium, 49% said low. Let's get this lady here about what you need from the community.
My name is Ann Ife-Quinigwe. I'm with Newport News Public Schools, and our Career Pathways Initiative is part of the superintendent's vision to connect college, career, and citizen ready, or to ensure that our students graduate college, career, and citizen ready. And our partnerships are key to that. We have internships, we have job shadowing opportunities. Over the past month, we've had 40 students from Heritage High School going to Newport News Shipbuilding. They've been doing job shadowing in the engineering department, in mechanical, structural, and nuclear engineering, as well as in the IT department. We also have the entire spring break. Students have signed up for experiences out in the business sector, shadowing.
So if they can make that connection between what they're learning in the classroom and what they need,
it makes
in the
it so much more
world.
meaningful. It gets them engaged. It keeps them engaged. And we also have a business education summit tomorrow over STEM, looking at the different ways that our business community can support it. We can't do it alone as the schools. We need the input of the business community to make to make it successful for our students.
Okay, let's see this gentleman here.
Urban Hall, Hampton City Schools, Kickingham High School, grades 9 through 12. A lot of good information came out. Before I get to my point, I want to ask you to try and keep this forum together, and we can make a difference. We don't have this anyplace else. But if one positive step is to bring this forum together every so often, give us jobs to do, and we will impact the dropout rate. Is that right,
Chris? Cell phone numbers. I've got your name.
So my job as a career and technical education teacher is to blend what the core subjects are into what you're going to do on the job. And when it comes to writing, get out your paper, 3 paragraphs. Though this is not an English class, it is. It's the English converted to writing a cover letter. It is. This is not a math class. It is. We must teach you how to calculate how many hours you worked and what pay you get from that. You see? So that's the way you engage them. You have to get to what they want. Our end product is a productive American citizen. So once
and on that note, ladies and gentlemen. And hopefully you've heard something tonight that spurs you to get involved and do what you can to prevent students from dropping out of high school. I want to thank the teachers in our audience and our viewers online. Our young people are dropping out of school, and there are ways to keep them in. And that's why this project is called American Graduate. Let's make it happen. I'm Barbara Hamm Lee. Thanks for joining us. Good night. Honestly, you guys give yourselves a hand. That is wonderful. There are 4 takeaways from tonight's conversation about the dropout crisis and on-time graduation. First and foremost, mentoring and after-school programs. Kids need to know that someone cares about them. Technology and smaller groups can help ease large classroom situations. Teachers need to share their life experiences and reinforce positive images, particularly for African American males. Those things will help in terms of mentoring and after-school programs. Then there's the whole issue of social promotion. Early intervention is very, very important, and social promotion sets students up for failure. So maybe taking a look at ways that we can change the whole idea of social promotion. Issues at home is the third takeaway. Kids need resources for the classroom, and they also need to understand that education is something that can never be taken away from them. As one of our teachers says, you can lose your home, you can lose your clothing, you can lose your car, you can never lose the education that you learn. And finally, business and community involvement. Students need to know that there is a connection between school and work. There is a reason why they need to go to school so that they can be successful in the workplace. And then finally, school needs to be made more relevant across the board so that students will be engaged.
American Graduate Teacher Town Halls are funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and are part of American Graduate Let's Make It Happen, a public media initiative made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.